On 27 August 1967, a man was found dead in his London home in the early hours of the morning. He was 32 years old. His housekeeper had last seen him alive the previous evening. He had asked not to be disturbed. When the staff broke down the door of his bedroom that Sunday afternoon, he was already gone. The pills were on the nightstand. The curtains were drawn. His name was Brian Epstein, and 6 years earlier he had walked into a basement club in Liverpool and changed the course of popular music forever. Hit like and subscribe. It helps more people find stories like this one. Brian Samuel Epstein was born on 19 September 1934 into a prosperous Jewish family in Liverpool. His parents, Harry and Queenie Epstein, ran a furniture and music retail business called NEMS, North End Music Stores, that had made them comfortably wealthy in northern England. Brian was their eldest son, and from the beginning he was difficult to categorize. He was expelled from 2 Southport schools for laziness. He briefly enrolled at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art in London. He returned to Liverpool and threw himself into the family's record department at NEMS with such focus that he built it into one of the largest music retail operations in northern England. But Brian Epstein was unhappy in ways that were not easy to name in 1961. He was gay in a country where homosexuality between men was a criminal offense. The law dated from 885, from the Victorian era, from the same legislation that had imprisoned Oscar Wilde. To be openly gay in Liverpool in 1961 was not merely socially dangerous. It was a crime that carried a sentence of imprisonment. Epstein kept that part of himself hidden. He was meticulous, well-dressed, charming to clients, dedicated to the family business, and underneath all of it, he was searching for something that could contain the scale of who he actually was. He found it on 9 November 1961 at a lunchtime show in a basement club on Matthew Street called The Cavern. He had heard the name before. Customers at NEMS kept requesting records by a group called the Beatles. He went to see them out of curiosity. What he found was 4 young men in leather jackets, playing with a force and a confidence he had never seen in a music venue, eating sandwiches between songs, joking with the crowd, completely indifferent to the conventions of what a pop group was supposed to do on stage. He went back 3 times in 3 weeks. On 3 December 1961, Epstein met with the Beatles at NEMS and proposed managing them. They were 21 and 22 years old. He was 27 and had never managed an artist in his life. He signed the contract. They did not require him to sign. That asymmetry would define everything that followed. The next thing Epstein did was clean them up. He asked them to wear suits. He asked John Lennon to stop eating on stage and stop swearing at the audience. He asked them to bow after each song. Lennon pushed back. Epstein insisted. The leather jackets became matching suits with rounded collars, and almost immediately the Beatles started being taken seriously by the London music industry. Not immediately enough. In January 1962, Epstein brought the Beatles to London for an audition at Decca Records. A&R man Dick Rowe listened and passed. The line that history remembers is, "Guitar groups are on the way out." Epstein refused to accept it. He went to Columbia. He went to Pi. He went to Philips and Oriole. Every label in London turned him down. In February 1962, a small publishing company called Ardmore and Beechwood heard the Decca demo tapes and liked the original Lennon-McCartney songs. They sent Epstein to George Martin, the A&R head of Parlophone, a subsidiary of EMI that most of the industry considered a minor label. Martin was precise, classically trained, and amused by the unusual young man from Liverpool, who seemed to believe without question that his clients were going to be enormous. Martin gave them a recording test. On 4 June 1962, the Beatles recorded at Abbey Road for the first time. Martin offered them a contract. What happened over the next 2 years is the most compressed explosion of fame in modern music history. Epstein negotiated the Ed Sullivan appearance, guaranteeing top billing before they had a single American chart hit. On 9 February 1964, 73 million Americans watched the Beatles perform on national television. Beatlemania, a word that Epstein's publicity machine had helped seed in the British press the year before, crossed the Atlantic and became a phenomenon without precedent. In November 1963, Epstein placed them on the Royal Variety performance before the Queen Mother and Princess Margaret. He booked Carnegie Hall for February 1964. The Beatles flew into JFK on 7 February 1964, and the crowd was so large at the airport they feared a riot. Epstein built NEMS Enterprises into a management company that handled dozens of artists. He organized the licensing deals that put Beatles faces on lunchboxes, posters, and wigs. He licensed the Beatles name to every product a teenager could buy. He booked Shea Stadium, 55,000 people, on 15 August 1965, the largest audience any pop act had ever played. He negotiated terms with promoters on 6 continents. He also fielded the fan mail, the press requests, the television appearances, and the legal disputes that came with managing the most famous people on earth. But there was a life Brian Epstein was living in private that ran in direct opposition to everything he had built in public. He frequented clubs where gay men could meet. He was blackmailed at least once by someone who threatened to expose him. His psychiatrist, Dr. Norman Flood, would later testify at the inquest that Epstein's primary complaints were insomnia, anxiety, and depression. He drank. He gambled, sometimes losing 20,000 pounds in a single night at the baccarat tables at Curzon House. He began taking amphetamines to get through the concert tours, then barbiturates to sleep when the tours were over. The barbiturates stopped working at normal doses. The doses climbed. In August 1966, the Beatles played their last concert. It was at Candlestick Park in San Francisco on 29 August 1966, and they did not announce it as their last show because they did not know yet that it would be. But the tours had become unmanageable. The screaming crowds were so loud the band could not hear themselves play, and no one else could hear them either. They retreated into the studio and made Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Epstein's role in managing them had always centered on the live calendar. Without the tours, there was no calendar to manage. He tried to renegotiate his management contract, which was coming up for renewal. There are accounts of the Beatles being evasive, of conversations that did not quite happen. Whether they were pulling away from him or simply distracted by the work, by Sgt. Pepper, by their growing interest in Indian philosophy and the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, is a question that cannot be answered precisely. What is certain is that Epstein spent the last year of his life in a state of particular anguish, feeling the thing he had built beginning to move beyond his reach. In September 1966, He was hospitalized in London with an overdose of prescribed drugs. The official explanation was a routine checkup. Those close to him understood it differently. His father, Harry, died in July 967. Epstein sat Shiva in Liverpool, having just left the Priory Clinic, where he had been treated for insomnia and amphetamine dependence. He was back in London by August. On 23 August 967, 4 days before he died, he attended a Beatles recording session at Chapel Recording Studios in Mayfair. It was the last time he saw them. He drove down to his country house in Sussex that weekend with friends, then returned alone to Chapel Street on Saturday. His friends urged him not to go. He said he would be fine. He was found on Sunday afternoon, 27 August 967. The coroner, Gavin Thurston, determined the cause of death as an accidental overdose of carbatal, a barbiturate combining pentobarbital and carbamol, taken in combination with alcohol. The verdict was death by misadventure, accidental self-overdose. Suicide theories circulated then and have circulated since. The official ruling has never changed. The Beatles were in Bangor, Wales, with the Maharishi. They were told by telephone. John Lennon said later that he knew they were in trouble without Brian. Paul McCartney said something quieter. Without him, they would never have made it. The Sexual Offences Act, which decriminalized consensual homosexual acts between adult men in England and Wales, had received royal assent 5 weeks before Epstein died. He did not live to see the world become, by even that partial measure, less hostile to who he was. Brian Epstein built the Beatles from a basement club to Shea Stadium in 2 years. He managed them through the greatest run of commercial success any musical act has ever had. He died before Magical Mystery Tour, before the White Album, before Abbey Road. He died before he was 33, in a room by himself, while the band he had made was sitting in a field in Wales, learning to meditate. The question of whether the world would have found the Beatles without him is not a serious question. The world did not find anything. Epstein went and got them. If you want more stories like this one, click on the video on your screen right now. I will see you there.